What's up, mobile gamers? It's Johnzer Gigs back with the last tier list before we do a full one, and we're doing the damage dealers today. This is going to be really interesting because I've got two things to say right off the gate, right? We've got the July update coming, so that's going to kind of change where everybody lands, and that's why I wanted to get this out real quick for you guys so that we have this out and then maybe we can tweak it, make some changes and stuff like that. And I also wanted to say that these tiers are pretty, movable. There's not a big difference between C to B and then B to A and then A to S. You really have that jump from S to OP, right? And we all know what's going on there. So that's going to save us some time here. But what we're really looking at is a bunch of tiers that have a very small window for movement. So it doesn't really take much for one of these heroes to jump from C to B or anything like that. And that's kind of the biggest difference in the damage dealers tier list versus, like the support tier list or the flankers tier list. This tier list, honestly, you could just take all these guys and put them in A and you'd be good. So you'll see a lot of movement in the final tier list with all the characters, right? You're going to see a lot more movement in that than you will compared to this one. And especially the damage dealers are going to move around quite a lot because you have to also put in your support flankers and vanguards. And then when they're all in one tier list, it kind of makes it a little bit cluttered, kind of. But I also would like to say for you guys, I did change the icons here. So they're circular, so they match the icon on the corner, which is my channel icon. And I thought it would bring a little bit more variety to the tier list because I did use the basic skins. Now, I know I've had kind of mixed reviews. Some of you guys want basic skins. Some of you guys are like, just use whatever skins you have because they look cool. And I'm going to go ahead and use the basic skins because I think they are better for the beginners and the players that maybe don't have a lot of skins and they have just basic knowledge of the game. And at the end of the day, that's who this tier list is for. And this tier list, I think, is going to be always for the casual player. I don't intend to do competitive tier list or ranked tier lists. You'll talk about in this video, you'll see me talk about where they would land in ranked, right? And how they can be used in ranked. But that's not truly what this is for. It's just that ranked is the best way to showcase some of their differences. And I think that one of those differences, right, is right out the gate. We'll just talk about Gatlin. She is insane. She's busted. The devs have mentioned that at like the high top tier competitive gameplay with the pros and stuff like that, that they don't really see her as a problem. I think that's going to be dangerous for them. I think that when you balance your game with pros in mind, you have a lot of casual players or lower ranked players like, I don't know, maybe bronze to gold, like myself, who are not going to have the same experience, right? In competitive, you might be like, okay, Gatlin's super easy to counter, her win rate's not that high. But if you just jump into a pub match and you're far enough in the progress path that somebody has Gatlin or they had like a deal on her or something like that. If they have Gatlin, they're playing her. And if they have Gatlin, they're most likely going to win the match unless you have a player who is experienced enough to counter her. And it's very difficult for some of these newer players to counter Gatlin. And I've talked to some new players. I even had one of my friends literally get the game and I played every hero against him, and he was like, "Oh my god, how like you shouldn't be able to play that hero. She's basically an insta kill, and there's nothing you can do about it." And I was like, "Well, there is some things you can do about it, but for the most part, you're right." And I think that you should definitely take into consideration as a dev what your main player base is. So if their main player base is pros, then sure. But when you're looking at something like win rate, um, versus something like encounter win rate or even just pick rate, it's a lot better to use the latter than it is to look at something like win rate, right? So you could say that Gatlin has a low win rate. Well, that means that you don't really win games if you pick her. And what happens is you have pros and high ranked players who have setups and they go, okay, we're going to run a Fort, an Iris, and an Osos. And that's their rank setup. And they always run those three heroes. So those three heroes are automatically going to have a better win percentage than the rest of the heroes on the roster. So that's kind of where you run into flaws with that logic. So, like, for instance, um, most people, when you play a ranked game, you just kind of go in, you play to the best of your ability. But the pros will actually have setups for different maps where they'll have one person runs a certain hero on a certain map in order to have a certain advantage in the encounter. And that's where you see a lot of the diversity of heroes go away. You're not really going to see too much switching unless it's the entire team switching because of the comms, like to counter a Gatlin or to counter a Ruby or something like that. So Gatlin's OP in pretty much every other instance, and I think that she definitely does need that nerf. I don't know what the nerf's going to do, right? The nerf might move her into S, might move her even into A, but she's definitely OP. I don't really know what the devs are thinking with the um, fact that they haven't really nerfed her until now. So they are nerfing her as I'm recording this video. They're going to nerf her, but I don't. I think it was a little too late. She's kind of already solidified herself as a must pick in majority of my games. There's only two heroes that I always see no matter what. That's a Gatlin, and before Ruby got nerfed, it was Ruby, and now it's Gloria. Gloria has always been there, and I find it interesting that they essentially buffed Gloria and they nerfed Gatlin. So hopefully we'll see those two come into line a little bit more. And I'm hoping they'll nerf Gatlin more than they already have and give her a little bit of speed, because I think she does need that to kind of facilitate a more dynamic play style. That's kind of my thoughts on Gatlin. She's super busted, but we're not too worried about it because they are going to nerf her. So this is pre nerf, before the nerf comes out. Gatlin's OP. She's insane. And these next two, we're not really going to talk too much about because I want to make this a little bit quicker because there are 9 of these guys. And the next one's Christina, and she's in C because every hero that you have here can basically do what she does, but better. Um, she may not have the same trap as Gloria, but her traps are way easier to spot. In my opinion, they should make them act the same as Gloria's, where they're invisible until you're right up on it. So you can look around for them a little bit. Maybe they increase the radius of their visibility. So they're invisible if you're looking at them through a scope, like OSOS scope. And then once you're maybe twice as far as the Gloria trap, then you can see it. Because usually the Gloria trap, you have to be right up on it to see it. And it just makes it like way counterable compared to Gloria or Hualing or something like that, where you can't really, like, you can see them. You just shoot them, boom, you're done. And that's where a lot of her problems lie. Her damage is decent. She's getting a buff to her AoE, which is nice, but they slowed down the rate that you can throw down the traps, which means that if somebody destroys one of your traps, then you cannot kill them unless you turn and shoot them. And that's what's bringing her down, is that she can no longer have versatility in her kit because you either set up all 3 traps beforehand and then you're out of traps and you can't really use them, or you try to use them sparingly and then you're always out of traps and you never have enough, because it usually takes about all 3 traps to kill an average health hero, and you only have 3 and they're very slow to regen. So that's my thoughts on Christina. I still think she's pretty good. I actually use her quite a bit because of her AoE effect and the fact that her ultimate is very nice as well. But I think you'll see her play come up. Her play rate's going to come up when she gets her second ultimate, and they do need to make some changes to her sticky traps that she has right now, the sticky bombs that you throw down and they stay in one spot and blow up, because they are not very good. I think that's the main thing holding her back. If they switched them where they come back faster, that could make up for it. But I think if they're going to keep the cooldown as it is, they should be less visible, because you guys know the skin I like to use is the Chinatown one or something like that, the Fiery Lion, and that skin makes them super visible, and you pretty much can't even use that skin if you want to be viable with her. The next one, it really sucks because I love Hua Ling. I honestly would pick her above everyone on this list except maybe Mark or Gloria, as far as like my favorite, but I have to say she's in B. She's just kind of average. She can still headshot some of the lower health heroes, but she can't do anything for shields. She has a tactical that until they bring the buff out has been terrible. It's not very good. I think it should be directional, where you input a line, right, where you're going to take this line forward, this line sideways, and that direction, right, that's where you go invisible. So you jump that way instead of only backwards, because it severely limits her. Because even if you try to use it to get out of a situation, most people are just going to keep shooting in the same area and just follow your trail backwards, and they'll kill you anyway. And that's kind of the biggest downside to her second active. And it really sucks because I think she'd be very, very good if she could make it directional. It would mix up her playstyle way more, and you'd be able to use the trap a lot easier too. She's going to be way better once her second ult comes in. She'll probably go to A tier once she gets back her second ult, and then we'll see how it's going to be with the buff. That might bump her to A. So the buff is A, and then the second ultimate is S, because then you're going to be able to take out those heroes like Jabali. You'll be able to use your ultimate, and it'll hit him and get rid of his shield and put him up in an easy spot. And I think that's going to be very strong because it can catch multiple people. So that's the quick way to say that she's not very good. And we're going to go right into A tier. We're going to end it with S probably. This is the lowest A tier and could be argued to either swap with Hua Ling or go down to the high B tier. And that's Judix. The only thing she has going for her is her ultimate. She needs like 8 to 10 rounds in her gun because all you do is sit there and reload. And the only thing that she has that's better than Hua Ling is two tacticals, her first active and her second active, that you can use to benefit the team. The snare is nice, but the jump back from Hua Ling is not, right? The snare doesn't necessarily help the team too much, but both of Judix's abilities do. So she's able to make it harder for the enemy to see the people that they're shooting at, as well as the second active limit their movement speed and scope speed and all that kind of stuff. And I think it also changes their fire rate, if I'm not mistaken. And she's above average only because of her ultimate. If you give her a different ultimate, she's C maybe, because her tacticals are kind of decent, but her gun is just so bad. You just need more ammo, honestly. If they change it to like 8 or 10, she'd probably be an S tier pick because she's very strong, but you have to basically sit there and manage your bullets instead of actually playing the game and using your abilities. And you are essentially using her to wait for her ultimate. And that's all she's for. You know, a lot of the other heroes, their ultimate's not the main part of their kit. If you look at somebody like Mark, he doesn't even need his ultimate. You could take his ultimate away and you probably wouldn't even notice because it's not that game changing. But Judix, all she has is her ultimate. And the only reason she's above Hua Ling is because both of her tacticals are better and her ultimate's better. So I think if they gave her more ammo capacity, that's what I would change. That's how I bring her in line with all the other damage dealers to where she's not just an ultimate, because I wouldn't mind if they nerfed the ultimate a little bit and gave her more ammo, because the ultimate is really the only thing keeping her up here. If you take away the ultimate, she's C. And unfortunately, the ultimate's so good that she has to at least be A to B. You guys you move her over here if you want. I don't mind too much where Judix sits on this, because she's in general just bad without her ultimate, and that's really her only saving grace. And so that was pretty repetitive, but that's where I'm going to put her, and I don't really mind her moving around a bunch. And we're going to go with the next A tier, which is Skatey. And like I said, you guys, there's not a big difference between A to S, I would say. The only exception being Judix, right? Skatey is very good, and if you want to say she's S, all the power to you. I just think that the heroes that are S kind of exemplify what it is to be very good at everything they do, to where you pretty much always have to pick them if you want to do good as a damage dealer, because Skatey is kind of difficult. She has kind of a high skill gap, and not a lot of people use her to her fullest potential. So she does have a glitch where she can kind of like float around the map or something like that. I can't get it to work on mobile. Um, so I'm not going to take into account that. But she does have the web, which is very nice for dealing with flankers. And if you can catch um, like a tank or something like that and use her tactical for that, then it makes landing ultimates on that hero very easy. It kind of almost functions um, like Fort's ultimate, where it pulls them into one spot, so you can kind of sticky trap the most annoying hero on the enemy team and then get rid of them pretty quickly with Skatey's tactical, and if you pair it with an ultimate. So I think that's very, very strong. And the flip reloads her guns, so she's always constantly shooting. You could even introduce that for Judix if you wanted to, right? You move her down to here or whatever, and if you introduce something where she throws her first active and it reloads her gun, then I mean instantly she's 100% better, because then she doesn't have to worry about those 4 bullets, whereas Skatey is kind of reliant on those. And I think that is where she shines, is because she has not only more bullets, they do more consistent damage. They do more damage overall if you have her passive, which makes the 4th shot like 30% more damaging or something like that. And then you can flip to reload. So you always have ammo with Skatey, and her ultimate is very, very strong as well. I actually think a lot of people will say that her second ultimate is better, and I can understand that. But as of right now, I don't think she's held back by having the first ultimate instead of the second. I still think her ultimate's very strong. It does have a considerable amount of knockback as well as a crazy amount of damage, and it does damage to everyone that it hits, which is really good and very underrated. I think you could even put her in S if you wanted to. She's that strong, and I'm really not understanding why nobody thinks that she's strong. I think she's completely underrated, especially her first ultimate. I think if you look at her ultimate comparatively, it is even more damaging than Hua Ling's or Christina's, because you have the knockback paired with the damage, and so all of the heroes are instantly one shot, even if you don't kill them right away, which is not even that big of a deal, and it comes back really quickly. So I think it pairs well with her kit as well, and I honestly don't miss her second ultimate that much. A lot of these heroes, their second ultimate was my go-to. So Hua Ling, that was my go-to. Christina, that was my go-to. Osas, that was my go-to. Mark, that was my go-to. All of these heroes, I pretty much would exclusively use their second ultimate, and I honestly did not mind that Skatey only has her first. So that's where we're going to put her. I think A is a pretty good spot for her, and you could argue S, but for the sake of time, we're just going to keep her in A and move on. Now, Mark is like high A, low S. I personally would put Mark in S, but I don't want to be biased and put him in S. And you guys are like, oh, well, he's not that good, which is fair, because if you are playing against a competent team, he can get shut down pretty quickly. And the skateboard sometimes isn't enough. I don't know if it's a hoverboard or a skateboard or a surfboard. It doesn't really matter what you want to call it. But that is the best part of his kit, is the fact that he is able to move around so quickly. Honestly, I thought about just putting him in the flanker tier list as well, because he's so good and he's so versatile. But we're going to keep him in damage because that's where he's at in the game. And I think he's insanely strong and another underrated hero, just like Skatey. And you could easily put him in S, and that would be fair. I don't necessarily think he's B, because I would say that I'd pick him over Judix and Hua Ling. if I were to be a new player, because Hualing's too hard to hit shots with, and Judix is too hard to manage her ammo. But Mark is perfect. He has a good ammo capacity. He has good damage. His tactical, which is the rocket, is very, very nice. And his board is actually automatic. So on mobile, I don't know if it's the same on PC, but on mobile, you just move your stick forward and it automatically uses his board, which is very, very nice. And I thought about even taking the tactical button off for the board because I actually don't even use it. And I think it's really nice that they did that. And I think a lot of the other heroes would benefit from some quality of life changes that are similar to that. So I think Mark's top of the A tier. He's very, very strong. And I honestly think that he's very underrated. His ultimate is actually pretty decent. If you can catch 3 to 4 people, if all the enemy team is right on the payload and they're all trying to push it or they're defending it, and you catch all of them, you can make quick work if you pair his ultimate with somebody else's, or even if you're just doing regular damage to them with your primary. I mean, he's strong. He is super strong. And I cannot wait for his second ultimate to come back because that obscuring of vision is going to be huge in ranked. I think he's going to be an S tier for sure once the second ultimate comes out. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him jumping into OP levels with the second ultimate because the fact that you can obscure somebody's vision in a ranked game that's objective based is huge because the kills that you have are very crucial and it's very hard to see on the enemy team through that ultimate, and the teammates of Mark will be able to see very easily compared to the enemies. And I think that's where he's going to shine. He's going to be insane, and I'm so glad they gave him a mobility ability because it is very, very nice to play Mark. He's so relaxing to play, and I think a lot of people underestimate him, which makes him even better, right? So you see a Mark and you're like, oh, it's just a Mark. And then next thing you know, he's behind you, uses his rocket, and then shoots you once or twice and you're dead. And then he has your spot. And especially if you are playing like Osas and you're up on a perch and you don't see him come around, he's very strong. And he doesn't have the limitations that a flanker does as far as damage output goes. I would say that I would rather be snuck up on by a flanker than a Mark because I know the Mark's probably going to kill me before I can turn around. Whereas a flanker, I still have a decent chance of turning around and getting some damage in to possibly turn the fight in my favor. So Mark's definitely A tier. And I'm not going to put him in S because I don't want to be biased to you guys. And I know you guys enjoy my tier list and the fact that I talk about it in terms of your casual players who maybe just started the game, and I don't take my personal opinions into account. I mean, the flanker tier list on its own would just be so much different if I took my own opinions into the mix here. But we're basically focusing on how the general community seems to see these heroes and where they would put them and stuff like that, especially if you're new to the game. I think that is the most important part. You should basically open a game up and try each hero, and they're all super fun in their own way, but none of them are like, I have to have this hero and I have to unlock them in order to even play ranked. That's the problem that you see with Gatlin. And I think it's one of the things that keeps Osas from being OP is the fact that he's very difficult to learn, and not a lot of people are good with him, myself included. If I were to rate like how good I play these heroes, Osas is C tier immediately. He's the only hero on this list that I'm not good with. I suck with Osas. That's why he's in S tier because I suck. But Osas is crazy good. He can one-shot any hero in the game except for the Vanguards. And if you think about it, on the average match, you're going to have damage done to the Vanguard before the Osas even shoots his first shot to that Vanguard. So he essentially does one-shot the Vanguards because they've always got either medium to high health and they're always going to be taking damage because that's their job. So I think that a lot of people kind of underestimate the fact that it doesn't take much. You just practice a little bit and you can be better with Osas. I just personally don't practice with him ever because I have my own set of heroes I like to play. and those supports and flankers and stuff like that, I just end up not touching OSAS because I don't like to sit in the back and snipe, and my sensitivity is really slow as well. So it'd be pretty difficult for me to play OSAS at a high level. And I'm not going to order the S tier either, you guys, just so you know. You can order them if you like. All the other tiers are ordered, I would say. But OSAS is just not quite as good as Gatlin, even though he has the counter to Gatlin, right? Because if you headshot a Gatlin, she's done, she's toast, and you're going to do very good if you are able to hit those headshots. He's insane. The smoke is very nice to help your team, and I think his ultimate's okay. I don't know what they're going to do with his second ultimate. I'm pretty sure they're going to either get rid of his second ultimate or make it have like almost no health and be super visible, because his second ultimate's going to be busted, you guys. To be able to teleport your entire team, especially to a advantageous position in a ranked match, is going to be insane. He's going to be a must pick. He's going to be OP just for the teleport alone. So I almost think they won't bring it back. It's kind of interesting. We'll have to see what they do, but I don't think he's going to get his second ultimate back. And he's honestly one of the only people I would say that about. All the other heroes, they're going to get their second ultimate back. I don't think a lot of them were busted. But OSAS, for sure, he's not getting it. And if he does get it, it's going to be so severely nerfed, you're probably not going to care if you use the first one over the second one. So we're going to get to the last two here. That's Hunter. Hunter's S tier. And I know I'm also not very good with Hunter, but I have been trying to play him more. And he's pretty crazy. You can 2 to 3 burst pretty much every hero in the game. He's got a heal, which is insane. He's got a reveal, which is very nice for checking corners and flanks if you have a team that's being particularly annoying with a flanker like a letter or something like that. And it even does damage, which is pretty cool. A lot of times I'll get killed by the flares that he has because I won't realize he can just throw a flare and kill me, and my health is actually pretty low. His ultimate's kind of all right, and where you see it is in utility. His ultimate can knock somebody off of a point, and let's say you have a Jabali and you're scared of him getting close to you. Well, you can whip out your ultimate and use it like 2 or 3 times. You see a lot of this in the TikTok or the YouTube shorts scene where people will use the ultimate to burst those guys up into the air and backwards and then shoot like 1 or 2 bursts and they're dead. And that's where he really excels. He is very good at single target damage, and I think he's very good at taking down shields as well, which is something I don't really hear a lot of people mention. So he is kind of somewhat of an anti-tank hero in that his gun does a lot of damage and it can push people back with shields or do a lot of damage to them, where someone like Gatlin can also do that, but he's a little bit more mobile, which is very nice. I think that's really all I have to say about him. He's just generally strong. There's nothing bad about his kit. Some people might not like his ultimate, but I think a lot of them are using it wrong. It's not a damaging ultimate. It's more of a utility ultimate that you use to give yourself an advantage positioning, or, in some maps you can knock people off, but most of those maps are not in the rank scene yet. So that's kind of up in the air if you want to include that. He's definitely always going to be S to A tier just because of how good he is with the flare and the heal and the crazy burst damage. The only one that I think can beat him is Gloria, especially with her buff. With her buff that they're giving her, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're thinking. She's already in every single game I play in ranked or pubs. She's always picked at least once, and in ranked, she's in both teams no matter what. Gloria is almost always the first person to be picked, besides Gatlin and Ruby when they were first introduced into that 5v5 ranked and before both of them got nerfed and stuff like that. But they're giving Gloria a buff, and she's already one of my favorite heroes, and she's just going to get even stronger, you guys. She's got more damage on her second, so her tactical, I consider it a primary because I don't use the shotgun. I use the rifle a lot more. So much so that I honestly forgot it was her tactical to change to a rifle because I don't even notice it. That's like the first button I hit when I get into the game. But Gloria's insane. She gets a speed boost with her passive. She has her second active, right? Her second tactical ability throws down that little gem looking thing, little pyramid, and it bounces people back and does damage, which is insane. You can't see it. It's exactly what Christina needs to be good. It's exactly what I think her little explosive should do, is be invisible and be hard to actually locate. And on top of that, her ultimate is crazy. It's AoE and it does insane amounts of damage. If you throw that on 2 or 3 people, you're going to get kills unless they're a tank. And like I always mention, a lot of the tanks are always low on health. Her shotgun's actually not bad either. She can't compete with like a Diggy in close range, right? Because the shotgun is just doesn't do enough damage. But if you run into like a hunter at close range, you're going to win that fight if you have that shotgun out, unless the hunter gets lucky or something and he pops his heel with a headshot and stuff like that. But for the most part, for your casual players, Gloria is the perfect hero. She's obtainable very early for free. She is very easy to learn, and you're going to get a lot of use out of her. She has immense utility in every area of T3. She has a knockback. She has it's kind of a stun, because when it knocks them back, it's hard for them to figure out where it is because they have to look for it. So it's like a pseudo stun. And her ultimate also slows people down when it hits them. So even if they get hit on like the outskirts of the ultimate on the very edge, they're still going to get slowed. And it does an insane amount of damage as well. So she's all around perfect. Their buff is insane. I don't know what they're thinking. But, maybe they'll nerf her again after this. And what I'd really like to see is to have everybody brought in line to that S tier. And hopefully that's what they're doing. They're going to buff everybody, and they're only going to nerf the ones that are absolutely needing nerfed. And their focus is going to be instead on buffing all the weaker heroes instead of nerfing the strong ones. So I'm really hoping that's what they do. But that's essentially going to be the end of the video. Like I said, this is where I would put everybody. This is kind of interchangeable, right? Hualing and Judix. I don't really know what you guys think. I think I'd probably say if Judix didn't have her ult, it'd be Hualing for sure. But, I mean, then again, Judix's ult is insane. And you could move her into A tier if you want because of how good that ultimate is. So that's kind of my thoughts. You guys can switch those. You can bring Christina into B. Like I said, the only thing that doesn't move is OP and S. All those heroes are insane. They're staying where they are for a reason, and you're always going to see them in almost all of the competitive and high-ranking games that you see. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see a tank with all 4 of those guys, with Gatlin, Osas, Gloria, and Hunter, because a lot of teams don't even need a healer. And you could maybe, I guess you switch Hunter with a healer and then go Gloria, Osas, Gatlin, and a tank. And that's pretty much the best comp you're going to find, unless they run into something that they need to switch the comp up. But these heroes are insanely good for a reason. I'm kind of scared to see where Gloria goes from here, because her buff is going to be insane. And I'm glad Hualing is getting a buff too. Christina's getting a buff as well. Some of the nerfs are kind of crazy, but no one in this damage area is getting nerfed except for Gatlin, which is warranted. So I think a lot of the other nerfs were also kind of quality of life changes. Like they do this better, but they lose damage here. Something like that where it's a trade-off. Gatlin's the only one that got overall an insanely huge nerf that was warranted. So those are my thoughts on where all the damage dealers sit. Remember, this is pretty close, right? If you were to bring all the other heroes into this, you'd probably see a big shift, because from A to S, that might all be an S tier. You know what I mean? In the overall tier list with every hero in it. So we'll kind of see where that lands. I'll probably hold off on the overall tier list until all these changes come out and then drop that. And then we'll basically use all these tier lists as a template for that video. So let me know what you guys think about where I placed everybody, and what you guys think of the icons too, because I didn't want to do the skin icons where they have different skins, because a lot of people are beginners and they're just getting into the game. And I also wanted to make it dynamic, and I thought circles kind of matched with my guy here. So those are my thoughts on where they stand. Hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Drop a sub if you like. I'm trying to grow the channel because I want to get more guides out to you guys. So stay tuned. Jabali guide's coming out. I just am waiting for his nerf/buff, depending on what you think, for that to drop, and then we'll drop the guide on him because I want it to be as current as possible. So we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.